it. Let's move to the Midwest, where Houston is a 1 seed here, the same way we talked about Alabama having, I think, a pretty straightforward path. I kind of feel that way with Houston as well. Miami, without Omier, we don't know what his status is going to be. If he's hobbled, I think that's a really, really tough spot for that team. Iowa, Fran McCaffrey's still their coach. Auburn still has Wendell Green. Indiana has never won anything of substance with Trace Jackson Davis. Like, how do you not pick Houston in that group? And then on the bottom half cart, Texas, you love them. You've loved them all season long. I'm sure you're sad you have to pick between Texas and Houston.
Yeah, I definitely am. This Texas team, I mean, Rodney Terry's got them boys playing. They love playing for him. The energy around that program is just great right now. And once again, I'm coming back to the elite glue guys argument. Sir Jabari Rice, probably one of the most elite glue guys in the country. And he just kind of brings this team together. You know, for every Marcus Carr, Minnesota moment that he has, it just seems like Jabari Rice comes in and kind of just levels it out a little bit. Tyrese Hunter's playing extremely well. We see what Dylan Dessou can do. And for them to go out and win the Big 12 tournament without Timmy Allen, and basically a home game for Kansas too as well. I know they were missing Bill Self, but at the same time, they were able to do that and basically win a home game for Kansas. So them winning the Big 12 tournament, I think, is not something that should be looked upon lightly. I'm all in on this Texas team. And also, like, how fun would Texas Houston be? Just that game would be absolutely elite.
So here's my thing. I think Texas is, to me, I think Texas is really vulnerable first weekend, and it has nothing to do with Texas, right? Like, when you're usually looking for, the teams that are going to get bounced, you're like, okay, who do I think is, I said Virginia is vulnerable, right? Virginia's vulnerable because they're not playing very good basketball. Texas is playing well. I just think they got a horrible hand dealt to them by the committee, right? So Colgate, to me, as a 15 seed, is a Middle Tennessee State level, underseed by the committee, right? Like that level of miss in terms of how good this team is, how well coached they are, how skilled they are. And look, they led in the second half against Wisconsin last year as a 14 seed, against Arkansas 2 years ago, I believe, as a 13 seed. And then in 2019, so the 3 tournaments ago, that would be, they played Tennessee as a 14 seed and they led in the second half of that game, right? Like, Colgate's been there. They've hung in these games before. They will hang again. And then you play a Texas A&M team that T-Rank has as the 6th best team in the country since January 1st. Or you play Penn State, who's got 5 quad 1 wins in the last week and a half, right? Like, that's a brutal draw for Texas. And that's not to say they can't win it. I think they're the best team in all those games. But I'm picking Texas A&M to win this game against Texas in the second round. Like, I think A&M, the way they're playing, the guard play from Wade Taylor, the ability for Buzz to kind of muck it up and make this thing grimy. Like, I don't think that's the type of game Texas wants to play. I think A&M comes out of this bottom and sets things up for a really interesting top, which I like you said, Greg, I think is open, but I do think I have one game I want to highlight later that we can get to in a second.
Ooh, let's go right to it, Sweeney.
Okay, well, there we go. I think Indiana-Kent State is the most important game of the round of 64.
Wow. Why?
So I think Kent State is a monster 13 seed. And I think they match up really well against Indiana because what we talked about this week at Big Ten. What's the one thing that makes Indiana look incredibly vulnerable? When Jalen Hood-Schifino doesn't play well, when their guards are neutralized. So Kent State has one of the best perimeter defenders in the country in Malik Jacobs. One of the probably 5 to 10 best defensive players in college basketball, Malik Jacobs. That is scary, right? If you just stick him on Hood-Schifino all night, you take him out the game, all of a sudden you're in trouble. And Kent State has a 5th-year point guard and Sincere Carey, who's got 1,900 career points and 660 career assists. They played Gonzaga to the wire. They played Houston to the wire. They led under 3 minutes to go in both of those games. If Indiana Like Indiana's going to get everything they want from Kent State and more. But if Indiana survives that game, I could see a Final Four. I really could, because I mean, Houston, again, it was no Sasser today, but Houston looked so pedestrian talent-wise against Memphis. And that's scary to me. And this is a Houston team that relies really heavily on jump shooting. It is very reliant on Shed and Sasser, who are not elite level shooters statistically, making shots and oftentimes making tough shots. And like I really think Indiana could blow this thing wide open. They just got to get past Kent State. I'm just not sure they will. And so to me, that's like the biggest swing of the round of 64 and I think it's like a 9:50 game. It's the last game on Friday night. Can Kent State somehow pull this upset, or does Indiana get the ball rolling on a deep march run?
I step back and laugh because I think all your points are good ones, Sweeney. It's just so funny that like the concept of the only thing that could be holding Indiana back from a Final Four and beating Houston is Kent State. Like I like Kent State a lot.
I'll tell you what, Kelvin Sampson doesn't want to see Kent State again.
No, I'm sure he doesn't. I like Kent State a lot. I love Sincere Carry. I just don't see a way that TJD doesn't dominate that matchup. And same with Miami, honestly. Like that's part of why I'm talking myself into Indiana. The combo of most games, Indiana's going to have the best guard on the floor. And most games, well, every game, unless they play Purdue, they're going to have the best center on the floor. That matters to me in March Cart. For a potential Houston-Indiana matchup, I'm looking ahead. I think Sweeney's point about talent is right, but I'm going to pull the proverbial quote unquote dog in them out of my pocket here. There's no way a Houston team that's known for just punking dudes in the NCAA tournament would not just do that to an Indiana team that's been known to curl up and shrivel into a ball in big moments in TJD's career, right?
Yeah, the one thing for me, and I told you this yesterday, Greg, we were talking about it on the side. It's something about like if I had to pick a Big Ten team to make a run, it would be this Indiana team, just because if anyone in here knows Miller Kopp personally or can relay this message, or if he's in here for some reason, my dog, please shoot the ball. Please shoot the ball and stop thinking you're J.R. Smith. You need to take 2 dribbles and take tough twos. If Miller Kopp starts actually shooting the ball, knocking down shots like TJD's ability to dominate the game, not just scoring and rebounding and dunking, doing all those things, the way he can pass the ball, I think is just extremely underrated. So yes, I do love that Kent State team. I do love Sincere Carry. I don't know if they're necessarily stopping this Indiana team. And we talk about a team, if we're going Indiana versus Houston, like Indiana's going to have the best player on the floor. So, I mean, I don't think you can really, negate that. Obviously, the bigs from Houston are some guys I would not want to mess with on or off the court. But, TJD is going to be able to, I think, get the best of those guys. So it's really what happens around them. I mean, really any Big Ten team, it's so dependent on others. Like even when you think back to Purdue, if Fletcher Lawyer breaks through that freshman wall and can actually knock down some shots, like this Purdue team is going to look a lot more dangerous. So it's a lot of what are the guys around the best players on the best Big Ten teams going to do is going to kind of determine how far they go. And I think that this Indiana team might have a run in them, and you have a pro in Jalen Hood-Schifino, which you can't overlook.
Yeah. It's weird because it's hard to just look at those two guys and not love Indiana's potential in this tournament. But then I look at everything else sometimes and I just get a little scared. Like what does Trey Galloway and Miller Kopp look like against Houston with the athletes and their physicality? I don't know. It scares me just a little. Like if we're worried, we're already saying Miller Kopp, just shoot the ball, be confident. That's not something I want to have to say on Sunday, March 12th, going into the NCAA tournament. All right, let's do our picks in this region. Sweeney, we'll go to you first. Who do you got?
So I have Houston coming out of that top tier with Miami, and then Houston beating them. And that's because I did pick. I don't think anyone's going to pick Penn State, Indiana, and I think that's going to be my thing. I'm going to latch onto it, and if Indiana makes it to a Final Four, at least I have clips on video on record saying I thought Indiana could make the Final Four. I just thought that Kent State was the only thing standing in their way. And then in the bottom, I have Xavier, and then as alluded to, I have Texas A&M, A&M, and Houston in an all Texas matchup in the Elite Eight, and Houston just tougher. So Houston makes the Final Four. I didn't come in thinking I would put Houston in the Final Four, but after the way it played out, I felt like I kind of had to.
Okay. Cart, who you got?
All right, so I got Houston coming out of the top, and then I got Indiana coming out of the next one. I think the Hoosiers got a little mini run in them, and it's kind of skipping ahead here. I think that Indiana actually ends up beating Houston. As much as that pains me to say, Greg, you know how I feel about Samson and my Cougars, but I don't know, something about Indiana. I'm going with the TJD narrative that he's going to have that run in him. Out of that bottom part, I got Texas winning, and then I got Xavier coming out of there, and then I got Texas beating them and Texas going to the Final Four.
Wow. Okay. Longhorns for you. This is the first one we disagree on, Cart. I've got Houston. I've got Indiana in my Sweet 16. I have Houston defeating Indiana. Then I have Xavier, and I have Penn State. They just keep hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting, boys. I'm in love with the Nittany Lions. Even today, with their back against the wall, down 17, they hit and they hit and they hit, and they had a shot to win. Fumbled the pass. That was tough. Otherwise, you can't convince me that shot wasn't going in. I'm going Xavier over Penn State. I'm going Xavier over Houston, guys. I don't feel great about it. I'm going Xavier, though.
Xavier over Houston?
Let's not even talk about it. But yeah, I'm going Xavier. I don't know. Like, Sule Boom, he's a dude, right? Like, I think he's the guy I trust the most in this region. Ball in his hands late, magical March moments. Is that crazy?
I trust way more guys. I mean, I love what Sule Boom's done this year, but like, I'm definitely trusting a Marcus Sasser over
Are you
him.
trusting Marcus Carr more than Sule Boom?
No, but I
trust Jabari Rice more than Sule Boom.
Oh,
yeah, I do.
On. I love the pump fake too, but come on, boys.
I trust Jabari Rice with my life.
I mean, I like your life too much, sweetie. Don't do that. That's a scary thought. No, we didn't really talk about Xavier at all, so this feels like I'm just rushing to throw them in there. But I like them, man. I like the Big East in general. Like, I think depending on the right draw, I would pick all 4 of the top 4 teams in the Big East to make a Final Four. I like Xavier's draw the most. Like, I look up and down that group. I'm just not a Texas believer. I know you are, Cart, but
the last thing was Xavier. I just think they're going to run out of gas because I don't think they have the depth.
Yeah,
they don't have the depth, and they don't have the depth, and they don't check, and I don't think that's going to get it done.
It's such a me archetype. Like, I fall for this trap every single year. Teams that have fun backcourts that don't guard.